Yeah, it's raining like hell out there. We've got flooding all throughout Washington State. I think even down into Oregon and certainly up into British Columbia. Local flooding here in the coast. Standing water everywhere. All of the roadside ditches are full. You could probably take a canoe down most of them. So it's wet. It's a winter. Anyway, a lot of stuff to get through today. And we're going to start off with the Boscovich Self-build UFO Challenge. And I'm on hold at the moment in pursuing the Boscovich Theoria Naturalis Philosophy because run into an issue relative to light. And so the experimentation that I'm doing with magnets up until very recently when I got the theremin and started messing around with sound was using light as a mechanism of examination of effects being caused by playing with magnets. And so it becomes apparent after reading in to about 254, Article 254 in Boscovich's Theoria, that light can intrude on the process I'm seeking to examine. So I've got to eliminate some things before I can proceed on. In order to do that, I get diverted again because I needed certain understandings from an etheric viewpoint of the dielectric and the production of light. This is especially key relative to what we used to call cold fusion or sonoluminescence. And that's where you would take and basically crush the air out of a liquid with electrical probes and stuff in a glass vessel, and you would cause light to appear where none had appeared before. And the assumption was in the quantum thinking that this was an aspect of a fusion reaction occurring. Cold fusion, they called it. And there's an entirely different way to think about that particular reaction and its application to the work with fun with magnets in order to do a self-build. So my self-build UFO thing is on hold until I can get through Boscovich's book on the physics of light, the Dissertatio Physica DE Luminae. The problem is it's in Latin, so I got to translate it first. So anyway, so this is taking a little bit longer than I'd anticipated, and it's full steam ahead in Boscovich's Theoria until I need to understand what he's saying here about light. And so I've got to hop over and read this. As long as I'm reading it, it's only got like, I think, hang on a second. Let me see how many. He's got it all laid out. I mean, just incredible charting and stuff. Much of it applicable to Theoria, much of it transferred over because light and the dielectric and ether and all this stuff's all bound up together. Hang on a second. CLXXXIV 184. It's only got 184 articles, so it shouldn't take me that long to translate and get through. My mechanism for translating technical Latin is to go through and get all the easy stuff, leaving tags for those areas of ambiguity due to word arrangement within the sentence, and then come back and reread and rewrite as though first person speaking the translation. So it'll be available. When I get it done, I'll make a PDF of it available so other people don't have to go through this. But then I can get back onto Boscovich and Theoria relative to fun with magnets and building my own UFO. So small diversion. I went ahead and bought all of his other books in Latin too, so might as well, just because once I get started in it, I might as well start translating it. Okay, so then, so there's that. The UFO challenge is off to its side at the moment. It'll get resurrected in about a month, maybe. I don't know. Depends on how fast I can get through this. And that brings up Love in the Time of Cholera, which is an appellation to the times we're in. to the mood of to the developing mood that will go along relative to coronavirus and this other stuff. And that's actually a title from of a book by a guy by the name of Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Very incredible book. He's a Central American, I think. I don't think he was Cuban. Anyway, incredible writer, beloved by the Russians. He wrote 100 Years of Solitude, and that one will just crush you. Just grabs you by the throat and crushes you. Which is why the Russians like it. You know, they're just the nature of the people there. But he was highly lauded by the Soviets, and even today is well respected in Russian literary circles, even though he's South American, right? But anyway, a great book, and it kind of sets the tone for where we're at, right? Love in the time of cholera, and in this case, it's life in the time of coronavirus. Because it's going to get really wacky out there. It's already gotten really wacky. We'll get into some of that a little bit further down here. It sets the tone, though, okay? Because one of the general things about that book was the description of what it was like to live during a cholera epidemic in a period of time when cholera was sort of understood. And they had sort of an understanding of the necessary kinds of treatment to get there, right? To get over it. But it nonetheless imposes restrictions all on your society because of the nature of transmission and all of this kind of thing, right? And so here we are in that same place mentally as we go through this part of the 2020s, the soaring 20s. Which is going to echo back to the 1920s when we had the Spanish flu that took us all the way to 1923 and the collapse of the Weimar Republic's currency and hyperinflation and the strain on the then existent gold-backed system here in the United States that was caused by that and some other currency things that were actually brought on by the impact of the Spanish, what we call the Spanish flu, on the social order. Now we have something similar, hopefully not as worse as the omens are portending. And we can just come right out and say that everything seems to suggest that the coronavirus is about twice as bad, both in terms of infection rates and death rates over the Spanish influenza. So that would put it up there in its own way, getting close to like a plague, you know, where a third of the population dies. Here it wouldn't be a third of the population, but it'd be half that. It'd be like 15%. Staggering amount of humans, absolutely staggering amount of humans. It would impact the social order for 100 years or more, depending on how wackadoodle we all get as a result of the impact of it, right? If it's a bioweapon and it could be proven and people got all bent out of shape about, you know, it getting released and stuff, could cause social upheaval at a level that most people are not prepared to deal with. So, and even now, even at the suggestion that it would be as mild as a major cholera epidemic, it's still going to change the planetary social order. Absolutely no question. It's doing it as you're watching this video right now. So as you're watching this video right now, not only is it the Wuhan province that's been involved, but now we have Guangzhou, which is to the southwest. Both of these are isolated. Now they're under quarantine. And so that's 400 million people. And the spread rate is replicating a bioweapon, not a regular virus. The unstated lethality is closer to what we would think of as a bioweapon and not a regular virus. There are suppositions that it's a bioweapon. Nobody has any real proof, but the suppositions are such and the nature of the disease is such, it makes it safer to assume it's a bioweapon than not. So as a rational human preparing to deal with coronavirus out and about on my planet, whether I think of the planet as a flat plate or an inverted bowl or a sphere, doesn't make any difference. Coronavirus is out there. So as a rational human preparing to deal with it, it makes it safer for me in terms of my reaction. There's no downside for me to assume and base my assumptions on this, or base my actions on this assumption that it is indeed a bioweapon. The reason to make that assumption is that if it's not, you're covered anyway, because you're going to take a little bit more extreme measures, thinking that there's a bioweapon that's out there loose in the herd of humanity, and you'd better prepare and do something about it. And in doing something about it, you will overreact, likely, hopefully, maybe. And that's sort of good, because overreacting is going to be a lot better than underreacting if it is a bioweapon and you just assumed it was like the flu. All right, so we've got love in the time of cholera, life in the time of coronavirus. Love in the time of cholera had its own form of scammers and fake healers and all that kind of stuff. We're instantly running into those here in life in the time of coronavirus. That brings up the next subject, which is chlorine dioxide, otherwise known as MMS, which is a sulfite of chlorine that you add to lemon juice in order to release or any other citrus, in order to release the chlorine dioxide. And Jordan Sather and Jim Humble and Corey Cassidy. And my particular bitches with these three individuals and MMS. Now, MMS and chlorine dioxide is touted as safe by Jim Humble, who is a doddering old fool whose mind is burnt out, whose lies have been refuted for decades. He has never cured any malaria. There's no proof anywhere he's done so. He could not read a scientific study or design one at any time in his life, let alone in the last 20 years. His beginning in this business was just as Jordan Sather, as an assistant manager at a health food store in California. Now, I think Jordan Sather's health food store was up here in the Northwest. But other than that, Jordan Sather, his claim to authority is that he was a manager for a health food store and he wore a lab coat. Jim Humble was also a manager for a health food store. I don't know if he wore a lab coat or not. He claimed to have invented a 200-question questionnaire that would determine your need for vitamins and yada, yada, yada. A sales thing, right? A sales brochure. And he's touting it as science. And then later on, he's claiming to have cured a relative of malaria by bleaching them. And then he went on to claim that there was all kinds of stuff going on relative to him trying to test his bleach on unsuspecting populations in Africa. Now, here's the thing about chlorine dioxide, okay? You can search all you want, and you can get all different kinds of opinions on MMS and chlorine dioxide. And I've used chlorine dioxide. It's used in swimming pools. It's used to purify water, but that is not a reason to ingest it, okay? In both cases, as a water purifier and as a swimming pool water purifier, it is known as a cancer causer. For swimming pools, too much exposure to chlorine dioxide causes skin cancer. Causes it. There's no dispute on this. You're supposed to limit children's exposure to swimming pool water. Coaches are supposed to monitor this shit relative to tidal yada 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 in some federal regulation in order to get federal money for swimming pool activities in schools. I don't know that they actually do that, monitor it, okay? But chlorine dioxide ingested especially in the form of an enema, especially that way, is incredibly harmful, because the chlorine atom alone, they cannot dispute, Sather and Humble can't dispute anything because his mind's shot. And Sather won't ever dispute anything because he doesn't have guts or vision on what the hell he's doing. But chlorine in the gut causes the formation of these chemicals called trihalomethanes. Trihalomethanes will glom onto a cell that would be called by a colonoscopy operator, it would be called precancerous. Now note, they can't tell the difference between that local cell deprived of vitamin C exhibiting local scurvy and any other form of cancer. And they don't know that any given polyp is ever going to become cancerous, and your body naturally eliminates polyps. But nonetheless, if you take chlorine dioxide and it makes it into your gut, you're fucked, because this stuff causes those cells to go cancerous 100% of the time. Boom, 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 boom. So a single chlorine molecule that makes it down into your gut that causes a trihalomethane to form that then gets onto a cancerous cell means that cancerous cell is just going to go batshit crazy in terms of growth. Okay, so there is a definitive link between chlorine in the intestines and colorectal cancer. And so Jordan Sather, and before him the other health food store manager, Jim Humble, have both doomed I don't know how many humans to colon cancer. And I've had colon cancer, and there is no pain that is greater than that. When you go to a hospital and people are dying of pain, they have bone cancer and they have colon cancer at the top, and then way the hell down here they have other regular kinds of pain like childbirth. Okay, so there is no pain greater than the colon cancer and or bone cancer. And Jordan Sather and Jim Humble have doomed humans to suffer colon cancer because their parents gave them enemas with chlorine dioxide, or because they drank this stuff. Now, if Jordan Sather is self-professing that he's dosed it and it's made it down into his gut, he'll probably end up with colon cancer. So those people that he's cursed will also be able to die in peace to some extent, knowing that he is also suffering that great, terrible pain. Jim Humble is a nut job. He is absolutely wacko. And Carrie Cassidy is out there pimping for him, and she's doing it in the same kind of way that she did for Jordan Peterson and some of these other fellows that went loopy in their old age by thinking she was, I'm assuming she's thinking she's doing them a service by putting them on the air in that shape and condition. But this guy is not rational. He hasn't been rational for probably 25 years, and he was never a great thinker. And his discovery has doomed all kinds of people to incredible levels of pain. So I have a personal beef against him, right? Just because I've suffered that pain. I have a personal thing with Jordan Sather in that kid is too fucking stupid, and he will be cursed by his own karma for having caused others that level of suffering. Anyway, okay, so that group aside, now we go on. Oh, and also the ESETI guys are now pimping MMS and this kind of stuff as cures for coronavirus, all of which is bullshit. So they're also going to be cursed at a karmic level for causing that kind of pain. And not many people survive it the way that Jay Widener and I have. We're the extraordinary few, okay? Most of the individuals past age 50 that have large colorectal cancers die on discovery because they're dying anyway, and they just like keel over, take to the hospital and say, oh, hey, you got a big colon cancer. Oops, well, you died. And that's just the way it is. So this is a very rare thing. So anyway, we'll see how. We'll see if Jordan Sather makes it, how he does with his colon cancers and with those people that are really cursing him about it. So it's not going to make his life that much easier. Okay, so now getting on to Corey Good and Wilcock and History and Tides, bringing us back to life in the time of coronavirus. It may be that David Wilcock and to a lesser extent Corey Goode are going to be lucky, and coronavirus is going to be such a huge giant impact on our social order that the problems that they have caused and the damage they have caused will have to fade because we'll all be dealing with other things. And, you know, it'll just be, well, you're trying to survive in very terrible times. There will be other issues, and you'll just say, fuck it. Who cares about, you know, Corey Goode smoking himself to death on crack or whatever the hell's going on, right? He doesn't look healthy. He looks really stressed and not doing well. You know, I'm sad. I don't like to see another human be that impacted, especially somebody who does not suffering well. Some of us do, you know, I mean, some of us, anyway. So David Wilcock and Corey Goode might be lucky here as the coronavirus starts sweeping through things. And it may alter the way in which all of these things are done to the extent that we basically can't afford the trivia and the fantasy. And so they drop off the radar, and there is no otherwise, you know, legal or social repercussions for their actions over these past years. It may be that way simply because we're going to live in the time of cholera, in the time of coronavirus. And if we were to take love in the time of cholera as an example, paradigm for what we're going to go through, there's a lot of shit that just, you know, gets sort of washed under the bridge, so to speak, as things happen, right? So many people die that the structure of old social interactions break apart. Even in today's life, that's happening. Okay, and so this is going to include the Edge of Wonder boys, although I don't know how they figure into all of this. They're just quite the little oddity relative to the money that's backing them, the production quality exhibited, the choice of content, the suddenness of appearance, the huge amount of money spent on advertising in order to drive up a relatively small number of subscribers, their connections into the Falun Gong, the further ties into ESETI, into Corey Goode, and all of this kind of stuff. Although I note they're not pimping Corey so much anymore, and they're not pimping David so much anymore. These guys just are sort of falling off. And they appear to be, now the Edge of Wonder boys appear to be trying to go lateral and broaden out their reach a bit, in order to, I think, recover from some of the, you know, from being collateral damage around Corey Goode. He's toxic. And, you know, he's damaged all of the conferences. He's damaged David Wilcock, Gaia, Edge of Wonder, ESETI. You know, they'll all admit association with Corey Goode hasn't done them much good. And it's, you know, it's not us guys bitching at Corey. It's us guys fighting against his very nasty activities and seeing that they're lining up with the bully. And it's like, well, fuck you, you know, Jordan Sather, fuck you, James Gillian. You're siding with someone who's causing me problems, and so I'm going to take your association with him as being a reason to not associate with your ass. So anyway, Edge of Wonder boys are going to find themselves in an interesting position because of their contacts into China, because of coronavirus, and we're going to soon get to the point where I think our government's going to start taking reactions the same way, or try to, as China. Okay, so now we get into the coronavirus stuff, now that we're 26 minutes into this. Okay, so my contacts in China who are near Hong Kong are saying that basically everything's seriously fucked up. That trains aren't running the way that they should. That the locking off of these two provinces is taking down huge swaths of infrastructure. That attempting to get into the newly locked down one in the southwest is running into barricades already erected across all the highways and this kind of stuff, and trains being stopped. And that it's that the Chinese government is reacting now in a way that they've never, ever, ever reacted before for any other potential pandemic situation. Again, this kind of a thing, the fact that the government is reacting so seriously and intensely and locking down so many people, even at this late date, and all of the deaths and the suspicious deaths of the doctor, the whistleblowers, and all these early people in December that were saying, hey people, this ain't right. All of these things seem to add up to the idea that this is a bioweapon. It doesn't seem to matter to me because I'm going to assume that it is, and I'm going to make my actions reflect that level of planning. That it's not going to be a regular virus that I have to worry about. It's going to be exposure to a bioweapon that will have some level of virulence that will be extraordinary, is being demonstrated as being extraordinary. And so we see the pictures coming out of China, the clampdown, the effects of the clampdown, the giant deathoriums, the rumors of crematoriums working overtime, and some other interesting information that does appear to be valid coming on out. And then we see the fact that it doesn't matter, that the virus has escaped, and if you were to just go and take all of the cases that are known to have been reported outside of China, that is, that have been validated by the little doctor test. So, 48 people on this cruise ship, after only 2 people on the cruise ship being tested and found positive, then within 24 hours it goes to 48. Now the whole cruise ship essentially has to be considered infected. On one of the cruise ship, there have been about 250 passengers that had gotten off before the quarantine. And they're being requested to come back by the authorities. That's a fat chance. Anyway, so if you were to take all of the cases outside of China and lump them all together, doesn't matter where they are, just the confirmed cases, 5 cases here, 1 case there, 2 cases there, this kind of thing, and then apply the already reported death rates outside of China, you're still back up at about 15%. So this is 15% of the known infected people, and it now is showing that so we have to be careful about this, but the mean age of death has fallen to essentially healthy or late adult. We don't know if they're healthy or not. Okay, so the mean age of death is now down there around 51. These numbers have to be taken very carefully with and not given much weight because of cruise ships, the self-selecting groups of people that are going to be on them, the fact that we've got those now predominating within our outside of China data set. But my point is, within a few days, let's say Valentine's Day, fitting, love in the time of cholera, right? By Valentine's Day, we should be able to make the determination by taking the total number of cases outside of China. So we're just going to assume China's 100% bullshit on their reporting and not care about it. And then assume that all of the cases outside of China are there's probably a lot of bullshit in there as well, but nonetheless, just by aggregating them all, we're going to get a better picture. And so we're going to be able to take next week total number of cases, divide it by the number of known fatalities, and come up with our currently operating death rate from the coronavirus at that point. And we'll probably be hovering between 11 and 15% as we are now. And that appears to be a base figure for what's coming out of China. Okay, so we cannot apply any weight to the numbers coming out because we know their government lied in December. We know they're lying now. We know there's the propensity to lying. And also, there's reasons why individual parts of the government will lie to other parts of the government just based on an individual not wanting to be put up against a wall and shot because of a perception that they didn't do their job, right? That kind of thing. So there's all kinds of political structure and infrastructure and honeycombing that you have to be aware of when you look at any of these numbers. But nonetheless, at the moment, it appears safe to assume that it's a bioweapon. It appears safe to assume that it's out and about and that you and I and everybody will at some point within the next 3 to 5 years encounter this bioweapon as we go about our business. Therefore, now, the last part of this, what can you do about it, right? You can do antiviral masks that will prevent some inhalation. Always going to have to take care of hygiene from now on, right? You're going to have to make sure you kill any viruses or bacteria because the reason to kill the bacteria is because if you got a bacterial infection, it's going to make you weaker and susceptible to viruses, right? So you have to be careful about all of this and get your hygiene levels up to where you actually use bleaching agents, right? Not MMS. Unless you're doing chlorine dioxide as a gas in concentration, it's a pretty miserable bleaching agent, really. You're better off with Clorox, dilute Clorox. Even dilute vinegar is better than chlorine dioxide. And also, by the way, MMS and chlorine dioxide will, without fail, cause oxidative residue, what they call them, reactive oxidative species, ROS molecules in your body that you're going to have to get rid of. So you're putting in something that's going to cause all kinds of inflammation, and then you're going to have to take something else to get rid of it because it's not going to do you any good, causing continual erosion inside you. It really, really bugs me about the stupidity of that, all based on Jim Humble's personality and some asshole pimping woo-woo reporters like Kerry Cassidy and Bill Ryan. And, for both of them, your karma is there too. You pimped out for that guy. You don't ever examine any of this shit. People suffer because you put it on the air, and these people think, oh, it's out there. I can believe it. She wouldn't lie to me. Well, she wouldn't lie to you, but she's too fucking stupid to be able to analyze it and tell you why it's bad for you. And so she pimps the guy because she thinks he's a harmless old fellow that needs the money. Anyway, okay, so what can you do? Well, the first line of defense, get your vitamins up. You got to get your body in good shape. It means get your lungs clean. This is a respiratory illness. You need to not dry out your mucous membranes. If you're in, and I'm not in one, but I mean if you have like the overhead office kind of situation, if you're exposed to O2 generators, if you're exposed to negative ion generation through forced air furnaces and stuff, you need to have your mucous membranes protected, which means you've got to have good fats in your system because the underlying protection for the mucous membranes and actually to aid their function is good fats in your system. And I'm not talking about seed oils. I'm just definitively not talking about soy or canola. Neither of those should be consumed, in my opinion, by man nor beast. But in any event, if you don't have the fats, your mucous membranes can't protect you from the viruses because the fats are part of the signaling system that goes to the thymus to tell you to bring on the anti-infection brigades, and they also trap things in the mucous membranes for those brigades of cells to come and kill, and they serve dozens of other purposes in your immune system in the process of protecting you from these viruses. So the first thing is get your vitamins up so that you've got vitamins in your system, and we know that this virus is killing by way of cytokine storms. You can't have a cytokine storm of any size if you've got adequate levels of B6 in you. So you can get cheap B6 of quality with B12 on Amazon. And as long as you've got an adequate level of B6 in your system, you can't have a cytokine storm. So you might, and actually it'll even help prevent getting the infections because B12 and B6 participate again in a healthy immune system, as does vitamin C and vitamin D, so you can't neglect any of them. I don't trust multivitamins myself, so I take, I get the vitamins I want and take the dosage levels I want. And that's something everybody has to investigate for themselves. But get the vitamins levels up, get your fat levels up, get your energy levels up, and then hygiene, right? Now you can get hold of, if you've got issues with breathing. So here's the thing, if you're spraying lots of bleach around everywhere, those spray things, and then you go and wipe it all up, you're gonna be exposing your lungs and the villi and your snout and through your esophagus and all the way down to harsh chlorine in the form of airborne aerosols, okay? So there are other approaches to sterilization, and that includes ultraviolet lights, all right? So ultraviolet lights are still very good ways to get sterilization at a reasonable cost. And they're reusable, they're green, they just use electricity in a bulb, and eventually the bulb wears out and you get another one. But they sterilize surfaces without putting down bleaches. You don't expose your skin to any of the chemicals, you're not breathing them. I'm not saying don't have both, but up the hygiene levels. And then get prepared for the response and the preparation, okay? So now I'm gonna get done real quick. I need to go make another cup of coffee actually, but okay, so China and the USA and the whole globe, all these governments are, from my viewpoint, seriously fucked up institutions. As a result of being seriously fucked up institutions, I'm assuming that they're gonna lie to me and they're gonna be stupid, backward looking, and reactive. And I'm also assuming that populations are gonna do what they do up to the point where they get quarantined. So I'm assuming that at some point quarantines are gonna happen here in the United States. They may happen at a state-sized level. So we may just, have to quarantine, I don't know, some state just because people, too many people get sick and we don't want anybody traveling in and out. This is gonna cause all kinds of problems here in the US because we don't have the structure under which borders can be shut down the way that they do in China. So our borders here are gonna leak a lot more, and this is gonna cause the government to overreact, and there's gonna be all kinds of problems. So I'm assuming that these problems are going to exist, and I'm gonna start doing things like buying vitamin C ahead of time, worrying about my particular supply chain to get me through the next 6 to 8 months as China gets impacted. Because if 3 more provinces go down, then all of China is down, which means the whole world's production is shut off on damn near everything. So anyway, so all of global trade will grind to a halt. And then it'll all have to be rebuilt, and it'll be a long time of disruptions. This will be akin to the barricade of Berlin in the 60s, where we had the air hops, where they had to fly in coal so people could heat themselves through winter, the airlifts. And that was a weird time. This also is going to be a weird time. I've seen these before. Trust me, we're into one now, guys. So if you need a new sweatshirt, it's going to come from China. Better order it now, because a couple of months from now, you may not be able to. Get yourself a good long project, because you're going to be spending a lot of time not going to big social gatherings, especially as the virus spreads and people's natural reaction is going to be to say, no, I don't need to go to that UFO conference so bad that I'm going to risk coronavirus, right? I don't want to travel in an airplane and get trapped breathing the air of all these other people, one of whom may be infected, and then all of us are, right? Don't want to go to a large gathering and get all, sick and such. So it's going to impact all kinds of things all through this year. It's going to be interesting to see whether this actually forces us into some kind of a certified electronic voting system, because we may not be able to actually have people show up to voting booths in order to do that because of fear of virus spread. We can do secure online banking. You know, occasionally you hear about things getting broken into, but not usually banks. You know, double or triple authentified, you know, who you are and vote online. And it'd be really interesting to see how that would play out if we're going to have to go that route. But we're going to have social changes this year for sure. We're in sci-fi world for sure now. And a lot of things changed then. I've been buying stuff that I know I have to get from China. This is going to affect my Boscovich UFO challenge, but I've got an old dictionary of Latin. I can sit down and work for a while with these and get some of these other translations done and see if in 6-8 months I'm still hamstrung by materials. Unfortunately, because I have to move, tin proved out to be, I have some pure tin, and it proved out to be very effective, especially when combined with other materials. And so it's like, uh-oh, you know, now here we are thinking about layering and potentially some rare earths just because of the nature of tin and these other materials. And in essence, it's going to be trying to make a stable, room temperature, dynamically activated superconducting material without a lab, you know, right here in my old RV shed. Anyway, though, so Boscovich is on hold. I'm doing translations. All shit's breaking loose in China. My local contacts many of them are now isolated. You know, Ron's guys, their clan is from the southwest there. He's over near Hong Kong at the moment, and he can get some information, but not much. He's having internal to China internet issues. You got to be super self-censoring over there. Will it come to the U.S. that you got to self-censor for, you know, so the government doesn't come and beat down your door and say, look, you caused all kinds of problems by saying coronavirus in that movie theater, you know? Anyway, guys, I've got to get moving here and get some stuff done. Remember, if you're going to have a response to coronavirus, do it now before you have the virus. And our mantra here, boys and girls, don't drink bleach. Don't drink bleach. I'm kidding, but I'm really serious about it too. Bye, guys. More later as shit happens. Love in the time of cholera.